evening and welcome to the 2020 Waldoboro Candidates Forum. My name is J.W. Oliver. I am the editor of the Lincoln County News and I will moderate the forum. Before we begin, many thanks go to the town of Waldoboro and its staff for facilitating our use of this space and of its broadcasting equipment. I also want to thank LCTV for being here and for filming the production to air at a later time on LCTV. We're here tonight with no audience in the room and with appropriate distance between us due to COVID-19. The forum is being broadcast live on the town's YouTube channel and on the Lincoln County News website. A recording of the forum will be available to view on the town's YouTube channel and will air on Lincoln County Television at a later time. The YouTube channel also allows voters to submit questions live, which we welcome. In a moment, I'm going to ask the candidates to introduce themselves. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to speak. My colleague, Alexander Violo, will hold up a yellow card at 30 seconds and a red card when time runs out. This process will continue as I ask the candidates each question. I'll start with a different candidate each time and move around the room clockwise. After the questions, we'll conclude with closing statements. Now, please introduce yourselves. We will start at my left with Seth Hall.
Good evening, candidates and moderator and guests. I'm Seth Hall, a resident of Waldoboro for 11 years and 66 days as of today, I think. Very happily settled down on Gross Neck. As many of you know, I've been a pretty active participant in town politics for almost that duration of time. I'm also a small businessman here in town, having started 2 small businesses, the Bug Tussle Brooder, which is a light industrial and studio and office space at the former Fieldcrest Nursing Home, and more recently, the Bug Tussle Annex, which is a co-working space and office building downtown in the Village. It's the former Taction building. My concerns, just generally, very quickly, and I'm sure there'll be more questions about this later, in not a particular order, but our greater openness and transparency in our local government. We've had some significant issues in this regard in the last 5 or 6 years, and I think they need to be addressed. I'm very interested in economic development, not only in my private businesses, but in general. This is my town. This is where I assume I'll be planted someday, and I'm very interested in seeing it thrive. And I've been very active in that regard. I was chairman of the planning board for, I think, 5 years. I've been a member of many committees, including communication technologies, the renewable energy subcommittee, of which I was also chairman, the transfer station committee, and other things. I think that's good enough for a start. We can leave it there.
Thank you. Jann Griesenbrock.
Hi, I'm Jann Griesenbrock. I'm running for selectman in the town of Waldoboro. Why am I running? Simply, I was asked. I probably wouldn't have done it if someone hadn't come up to me and what would you think about working with us and being a contributor to the town of Waldoboro? So my wife and I thought about it, and I threw my hat in the ring, and here we are. I've lived in Waldoboro for 18 years, and I'll be the first to admit that I really don't know that many people. My roots are Midwestern. I was born in Illinois, I was raised in Iowa, and I spent quite a bit of my adult life in South Dakota. I was the first in my family to earn a degree from a university, from my immediate family, and I earned a Master of Science degree using the GI Bill. I'm the father of 3 children, all who have earned university degrees, and they live in Nebraska, Iowa, and Illinois. I call them the Interstate 80 kids because they're all right along Interstate 80. And also I have a stepdaughter in Owl's Head. I was in the Army and the Army National Guard for 28 years. My early years in the artillery. Later with public affairs, I was on active duty with the in military science, or ROTC, the Counter Drug Task Force in Washington, D.C., and professor of military science, and finally as head of the recruiting operations for the state of South Dakota. I was awarded the Legion of Merit, which for me was a huge honor, and I retired as a lieutenant colonel. Thank you.
Jann Minzy.
I'm the incumbent. My name is Jann Minzy. Actually, you'll see on the ballot that it's really Joanne, and I have no idea why. But I've been called Jann since birth. I'm not from Waldoboro. That's neither good nor bad. It just is. I'm not from anywhere. I was born at my grandmother's, never lived there. I was born into a military family. My father was a sailor. And every year we hitched our trailer to the back of our car and we headed across country. So sometimes we went through the South and through Texas and saw the tumbling tumbleweed, and sometimes we went over the Rockies, which sometimes I remember being very scary as a young child. I have lived at 205 Jefferson Street in Waldoboro for 46 years. I live on the bend of the river where the fresh water meets the salt water. And I think there is no finer place to live than where I do. I love where I live. I love Waldoboro. I've raised 4 children here. I now have 16 grandchildren, so a prolific family I have. I'm a career teacher. I taught young children and adults for many years. I've worked 2 jobs most of my adult life. Hard work is, I'm no stranger to hard work. I worked at Taction Nights for 15 years. I worked for the National Assessment of Educational Progress, the nation's report card, for numerous years. Worked for the census, and numerous other jobs. I'm here to just ask for another term. Thank you.
Thank you. Margo Metrick.
My name is Margo Metrick. It will be Margaret on the ballot, but I've been Margo since the day I was born. That was in the coal regions of Pennsylvania, and we came to Waldoboro, my husband Bruce and I, 13 years ago, because it reminded us a lot of the coal region area, the people, their kindness, just the whole area. The difference mainly being you have a beautiful river, so we didn't. But I've worn many hats during my life. I am a mother, a grandmother. I was an assistant nursery school teacher. I was a business owner. I'd had my own business that I started and was successful at for 20 years. And my interest in Waldoboro and being on the Board of Selectmen is the fact that I think we're in a very, as all of us are rather weary of hearing, we're in a very challenging, difficult time. Waldoboro was having issues before the COVID struck, and I think now we're really at a tipping point where in order to move forward, we are going to have to just pull together, bring what we can to our town, and work very hard to get our town into a position where everything we want to do can be sustainable. I'm very concerned about our children, the food insecurity, the fact that they've had to be homeschooled and, for 3 months, and we really need to look at the children and give them hope and a vision for the future.
Thank you. Our first question comes from Waldoboro resident Freeman Zausner and goes first to Jann Griesenbrock. What role will you play as a selectman in helping Lincoln Health to establish a major patient service facility in Waldoboro?
Okay, this should go fairly fast. I just learned about this the other day, but I think it's an exciting opportunity for Waldoboro to have an outpatient healthcare facility right here for the residents of Waldoboro. As our residents become older, they need more health care available, and to have it within the boundary of Waldoboro, I think, is a significant advantage. And I look forward to helping with that endeavor.
Okay, that question goes now to Jann Minzy, and if any of you ever want me to repeat a question, I'm happy to do that.
Well, that's an exciting question. We've been working with Maine Health, Lincoln Health, and the Y. We have a partnership going now. Bob Butler, who is on the board, and I have been on that committee with Julie. It's been very exciting. It's been put on the middle burner, I think, during the COVID-19 time. But I look forward to getting back to those meetings. We have a town manager who thinks in the big picture, and this was one of her big picture thinking times. She's a collaborator, and to me, that's how it works. We all work together. Lincoln Health is right down the road from us. The Y is right down the road from us. We all work together. Actually, the planning is been on the budget through Miles for Lincoln Health. They keep changing their name, so sometimes I don't know exactly what it is. We're looking at that, and we had a survey that went out. We're looking for a community building. So we're looking at the health services. We're looking at community center. We're looking at Head Start, and who knows what else can go into that. We were working quite regularly on that before this all happened, and I look forward to getting back to those meetings.
Margo, Metrick?
As a registered nurse, I'm very excited about the prospect of having this facility in Waldoboro. I think that it will be a great asset to our town. I would like to convene with residents of the town to discuss what they feel their needs are. We have quite a few issues in Waldoboro with elderly people, people who don't have transportation, opiate and substance abuse, and I'd like to make sure that the town needs are met. And I'd like to hear from the people to see what they feel those needs are. Just today, a law was enacted that Governor Mills will now, has passed, it was approved in March, but it was enacted today that if you are on Medicaid, you no longer have a pre-authorization waiting period necessary. And I think that that will be a big asset to us. I want to make sure that whatever goes into this building, it meets the needs of us on the mid-coast and in our town. Not that it's just some big medical building sitting there. I'd like to bring in specialists if we can. They come from other facilities at times to the building in Damariscotta. I think that will be very helpful for our residents, especially the elderly and those that have problems with transportation. And I'd like to hear from the residents and be your voice on the board. Thank you.
Seth Hall?
So this is a subject pretty close and dear to my heart. About 2.5 years ago, John Blamey and I, members of the Madomic Valley Community Foundation, felt there was not only a need for health care, but in an extended sense, community care, which is sort of social health care. And we proposed and started working on a community center for Waldoboro. We had proposed that it be in the A.D. Gray school building right in the heart of the village, but off the main road. Part of that, part of our due diligence was discussing with Miles, now Maine Healthcare, whether they would like to be an anchor tenant and have a small facility, outpatient clinic there. And they thought that was a good idea. We didn't get much beyond that because we were never able to bring the community center to fruition for a host of reasons. Ours is the oldest state in the Union. Lincoln County is the oldest county in the Union, and Waldoboro is the oldest county age-wise, demographically, in Lincoln County. We have significant health needs for all of our citizens, not to mention young families, young children. Head Start is also something I'm very interested in, I hope we'll talk about, and something I've been involved with fairly extensively with Mid-Coast Community Action down in Topsom. The idea that we have a multitude of health issues that we should be addressing, including mental health, drug health issues, the whole range any community has, all need to be dealt with. I think a satellite facility would be terrific. As we probably all know, there are 3 small clinics, one of which is associated with Miles. It's in an older building over on Old Main Street and serves good purpose, but probably needs to be upgraded. So I would look forward to that work as a member of the Select Board.
Jann Griesenbrock? I'm sorry, this question already went.
Yeah.
Yes. So the next question is going first to Jann Minzy. Waldoboro recently conducted a survey regarding the potential for public transportation from Waldoboro to nearby destinations, such as the Twin Villages or Walmart in Thomaston. What role, if any, should the town play in the provision of public transportation?
Well, there was a survey. I think Max, who is our planner, was the one who did that. And he brought that to the select board, brought some of the results to that. It was, there were some that were, it was hard to say. It was equal. You know, they came out 50-50, so it was really hard. It wasn't definitive. We do have a lot of people here who do not drive, who can't drive. We have elderly housing in town, a couple of different places. We have some local people who will do the driving for them, but we do have a need for that. We've discussed having a taxi service come in the past. We are still working on the survey on the transportation. I think it's a need. It's not a huge need. As the survey came out, it wasn't as huge a need as we thought it might be, at least according to that survey. So we have had community forums in the past. We've had a couple that were wonderful, and that's where we got the ideas, what the needs of the town were, what the people really wanted, good representation at those meetings. And from those, we've come up with a number of ideas, and I think maybe the Lincoln Health came out of that. And that's one of the topics that came up at our community forum. So there's a need, and we haven't finalized anything at this point.
Margo, Metrick?
I think there definitely is a need. We are the oldest population in our county, and I think that's important to address with the medical building as well, because if you can bring some specialists to our town on a rotating basis, certain days during the month, then it will make it easier for residents who have to otherwise go to Penn Bay in Rockland or over to Lincoln in Damariscotta. I'd like to see some sort of a service. I don't know how regular it could be. It would have to be funded by the town, I assume, unless we could get grant money or state money for this. But perhaps we could get a shuttle type service that would provide transportation to those who need it. We have a lot of people, even younger people in town, who don't have vehicles, and I think this would be very helpful. Again, it would be helpful to have the clinics and the medical building that are needed so that the people can go there with their children for clinic visits, immunizations, that type of thing. And I think that transportation, if we could get it, would be a really good thing to have. The 50-50, response by the residents, I don't know if that indicates that only half would be willing to support transportation, but perhaps we need to delve into this further and see further where these people need transportation to and what would make it easier to make what they need more accessible to them. Thank you.
Seth Hall?
As Margo mentions, it's true, transportation is expensive and it's difficult, and surveys don't always cover everybody that you would hope that they would, particularly housebound people. Jann mentioned the community forums. I believe there were 2 community forums, widely separated by 6 or 9 months, something like that. This is part of my concern about open government in our town. These were not open forums. These were closed invitation-only forums by town management. I'm sure their intentions were good, but when you have a closed forum, you by definition don't get broad input from the town. And this is something I'm very concerned about. I asked to go and was told I couldn't, for example. Now that doesn't make sense to me. Why would that be, that an interested person who's politically active and enthusiastic about town issues wouldn't be permitted to go to something like that? A question worth reflecting on. We definitely need transportation. I think there may be an interesting creative solution that I've been talking with Mary Ellen Barnes about. We share this problem with many local towns, from Jefferson to Warren to Cushing to Friendship to a little north, Union, Nobleboro, Edgecombe. All of us need to get to certain places, usually commercial centers like the Thomaston area, or Miles, the healthcare center in Damariscotta. Like broadband, which I hope we'll talk about more, regional solutions take the worst pressure off individual towns, and by collective action and funding, along with federal support, distribute the burden more fairly across a larger population of people. But the towns have to work together to make that happen. I think that's a terrific model in general. And as I say, I hope we'll talk about this with broadband communications as well, because it works there too.
Jann Griesenbrock?
Okay, I do believe that there's a need for available public transportation in the Waldoboro area, and I support it. As was mentioned earlier, the age groups that would probably use it the most are the elderly and the young. I think it should be on a regular basis so that someone could plan appointments for certain times when this transportation asset be available. I think it would be heavily used. I think you'd start out slow, tempo, and increase as time goes on. I think it would be a great benefit to the residents of Waldoboro, and I think everybody would benefit. Thank you.
Thank you. This question is going to go to Margo Metrick first, and it's another audience question. This comes from Ruben Mahar. Ruben asks, what is your top priority for the town of Waldoboro?
Well, if I had to pick one, it would be a difficult choice. Right now, unemployment in Waldoboro is an issue. Our river is obviously a very important issue for our clammers and our lobstermen and our children and their education. So I suppose I would start with the unemployment issue, because the first thing you need are jobs. And we've been here for 13 years, and everybody wants jobs to come. So far, it's been kind of mixed. We've lost some businesses this year. And I've actually started to write letters to Fortune 500 companies and entrepreneurs, asking them for their input, telling them about our area, what we have available, that we have hardworking people who need jobs and will be loyal to them and work for them. And I'm hoping that maybe something will come out of it. I was dismayed to hear that when Sylvania Osram left, I thought they had all gone to the Czech Republic. And then I found out that some of them, part of that building that generations of Waldoboro people had worked in, went to New Hampshire and is still operational in New Hampshire. So that's the type of thing that we want to provide, a climate that really will bring industry here. And that's not an easy thing to do, but I think if we really make an effort, we're going to get a fish to bite on the line, and we can bring something here that will employ a significant amount of people, whether it's industry or technology. I think if we really work together on it, we can do that. Thank you.
Seth Hall?
A subject dear to my heart. I think you need a number of things in a town to make it a cohesive unit, economically, socially. Jobs is certainly, as Margo points out, very high in that list. And we've had basically flight of jobs from the older One Pie and industrial stuff up in the business park to Sylvania, Osram. We have some very nice growing businesses. I like to think that we house AnswerNet down at the Bug Tussle Annex. That's one of them, something I did on purpose to bring those jobs back from Rockland. And we were working with them for about 18 months to get them into the brooder, and then we had the opportunity to bring them right into the village, which economically seemed to make more sense to me, so we offered them that space there. You need, in order to attract remote working professionals, many of whom are mature, some beyond family raising, children raising years, you need the amenities that are conducive to supporting professional life. One of those is broadband. That's just critically important. Although this town has been fairly successful working with Connect Maine, the broadband authority that's trying to improve situation in Maine, it's been grossly underfunded for years. And although we've gotten a couple of grants, we really haven't significantly expanded our network, either in terms of performance and cost, or in terms of coverage of the town. We still have pockets in the town that are quite underserved and some that are unserved. And the town has been working on that for sure, but there's much work that needs to be done. And that's part of a complex that, complex is not quite the right word, a set of efforts that need to be taken by the whole community, including employment, including healthcare. I guess one of the things that I would most like to work on is a sense of community, inclusiveness. There are factions, as in any town, and I think we could work on that, and some leadership from the select board would undoubtedly help that.
Jann Griesenbrock?
Okay, I think the top situation that needs attention, the most attention, is economic, without a doubt, because of COVID-19. People are out of work. People in a large cross-section of positions across our areas, were wiped out. Their jobs were just no longer available. And how they can get by to feed themselves, to house themselves, to travel, to pay their taxes. It's really a huge problem, and it's going to take a while. Even if in a perfect world things get back to normal, it's going to take a while to recover. And so we have to be sensitive to the fact that it is going to take a while, and that people, especially I think the people from Waldoboro, do a great job in doing the very best they can and in survival, basic survival. One of the things that Waldoboro does is the food pantry to help out. Roughly somewhere around 100 families a week are supported with the food, and which is, that's just a wonderful thing for them. Where I grew up, there was industry, all over. I mean, I came from Southeast Iowa. They had Monsanto, they had H.J. Heinz, they had Hahn Industries, all of that right there. Plus, 30 miles away was the Quad Cities with John Deere, Alcoa, and some of those big towns. And we don't have the industry here. We should try to bring it, but it has to be eco-friendly, so that it doesn't destroy our environment.
Could you read the question again? Just read the exact word.
Yes, the question again is from Ruben Mahar or Mahar?
Mar.
Mar?
Yep.
Okay, I'm over 2. What is your top priority for the town of Waldoboro?
My top priority, it's hard to have one top priority. I think Seth mentioned community. I think community, once you get community working together, then you can go do lots of things. What I was thinking, and our problems are very similar to the world's right now with COVID-19 and the economy. Those are our issues. We haven't had a great deal of health problems in town, I think because we've done our due diligence. However, economically we have, and we did pull together, our town pulled together, our select board, our town manager, our finance director, all our department heads pulled together, and we went back and redid our budget in light of what was going on economically. It was great. I think for us to really know a priority, I think we need to take our relatively new comprehensive plan off the shelf before it starts gathering any kind of dust. And take a look at that, because that is comprehensive. A number of people worked on that. It took a couple years to get it done. And it does hit all aspects of Waldoboro. And I think it's time that we really took a look at that, and maybe as a town, or as a board first, and as a town, we could look at that and we could see what priorities we want to go with right now, and maybe rank order some.
Thank you. The next question is going to Seth Hall first. At the same time voters decide this race, they will decide whether to impose a near total ban on consumer fireworks in Waldoboro. Do you support the ban? How should Waldoboro regulate fireworks?
An interesting question. I had my first, what do you call it, campaign question written in a letter to me about this issue from Ray Perkins, who is a town resident and he likes fireworks, but not all the time everywhere. And I'm not unfamiliar with that sentiment. I live down on Gross Neck, and we have a lot of fireworks going off, particularly since the ordinance lapsed, for nobody's fault. There was just a collision of language and so forth. So now we're regulated by the state regulations that control the discharge of fireworks. Part of the problem is people don't adhere to those regulations, just like people don't adhere to many regulations, including local ordinances. I'm not exactly sure how to develop a sense of respect for your neighbors and social comity, which I think is, as both Jann and I have mentioned, is really critical to social and economic and all kinds of development in a town. I don't know that imposing an ordinance will solve the problem. I'm not particularly for or against it. I think it's a travesty that our town hasn't dealt with it and it just drags on. I think that's on the select board. It should have been dealt with a long time ago. They basically created the problem through their erroneous language. But it is a problem. We should definitely decide one way or the other, and soon. That I feel strongly about. I think that's as much as I really want to say. I want a lot of input from the town, residents of the town. I don't know how exactly to get that, because not many people, unfortunately, come to select board meetings. We don't have a town meeting. But the select board perhaps could learn to be more active and aggressive in soliciting consumer, if you want to call it, or resident input on this and a host of other issues. It's a perfect place for, if you want to call it this, select board activism, which I'm an advocate for. I believe one of the things, I see a red flag, so I'll hold that for later.
Thank you. Jann Griesenbrock?
Okay, on the matter of fireworks, personally, I don't have a problem with people using fireworks. I will admit, the older I get, the less I like them. But, you know, that's something that overall, okay, but you gotta, I think, you have to watch where you do use them and how you use them. If, with Maine having so many trees and so much vegetation, and if we're in a spell like we are now, you know, I don't think you can do it. If you're during a wet spell when there's, you know, a great deal of moisture available, then, well, yeah, then it could be a good thing and a fun thing to take part in. Maybe having them set off, you know, like traditional town fireworks over a lake, that minimizes the problems for fire and for mishaps. So to summarize, yeah, I go along with fireworks. I think the town should be involved, but you got to use common sense in their use. Thank you.
Jann, Minzy?
Well, historically, I can just give you a little information. When Maine decided that it would be okay to have fireworks, our fire department got together and they worked very hard to create an ordinance. That went out to all the people. There were a number of meetings on it. I went to some of those. Paul Smeltzer, our fire department chief, went over that with the town numerous times. It was voted in, it was okayed. And we lived with that for a number of years. A couple of years ago, maybe one or two, not long ago, we had a citizen's petition. He didn't like the fireworks and he wanted to ban them. And he wrote his own paper, he wrote his own petition, and he wanted it put in the way it was written. He went out and got signatures. So the democratic way, got signatures and people signed it. He got enough. It was all tested. Everything was fine. And it went to the general public. And that passed. And what he had written was that the ordinance that we had in Waldoboro would be null and void. And so it passed. And our ordinance that we had lived under became null and void. And what that did was open up more freedom with fireworks. So we are then under the state rule because we no longer had an ordinance. We worked on that as a select board. We worked on that together. I worked with Paul, Clint, can't remember who else. And we put it together very similar to what it had been. We have a nice ordinance that will be going to the people very soon. And I just need to tell you, I am one of those people who had to go into air raid mode as a child when there were fireworks. And it's been just recently that I can even tolerate, but I have to focus on something. But I have a very big issue with fireworks, personally, but not for the town.
Margo, Metrick?
Fireworks. The fireworks issue really sets off fireworks in this town. And I have to say, I have 3 grandchildren. They come here, if we're fortunate, once a year. And when they come, our first stop after we pick them up at the airport in Portland is Phantom Fireworks. So we get a shopping cart full of fireworks, and yes, we set them off. We do it in a very safe manner. We aren't doing, big fireworks by any stretch of the imagination, and we always make sure we're finished by 9 o'clock. That said, I'm a volunteer for a dog rescue, and we have 5 rescue dogs, and our dogs do not like the fireworks. So when we go out to put the fireworks on, I put on music for the dogs to try to block the noise. This is an issue that I think the residents need to decide. It needs to go to the vote again. I don't think the board should decide for the residents. We have smart people in this town. We have people in this town who know what they want. I think it should be up to the residents. And we should get input from the residents, not just on the fireworks issue, but on any ordinances that are relevant. And the other thing is, we get a permit every time we set them off. You have to go onto the town's website and they will tell you whether you can set them off that day or not if there's a fire warning. So we abide by that, and if you can get people to do that, then that's good. That said, people don't always abide by the ordinances, and people are going to do what people are going to do, and I hear fireworks at 2 o'clock in the morning frequently. That's just human nature. But I think it needs to go to a vote to the people and let the people decide and not have a single individual making the decisions. Thank you.
Okay, next we're going to go to Jann Griesenbrock first with another audience question. This is from Sonia Sleeper. She asked via YouTube, What do you know about the operations of the town, police, and fire?
What do I know about the town, police, and fire? Well, probably about the same as everybody else. You know, that we have an excellent, here in Waldoboro, we have the luxury of an excellent both fire and police departments. I've dealt with the local policeman. I had a little fender bender, and it was fantastic. The way he handled it, where he carried himself, I was completely satisfied with the way that worked out. The fire department does, you know, a phenomenal job. I mean, they work very, very hard in their training. They just got some new equipment. They need the support of the community, and I think they're doing a great job. Let's put it that way. And I'll support them as any way I can as a selectman, because I just believe in strong and efficient, well-trained law enforcement, and the same thing with fire.
And Minzy?
I'll start with fire. A number of years ago, the fire department invited a lot of maybe 10 community people to come in to have an understanding of what the fire department did and what their equipment did. And I was fortunate enough to be one of those people. It was a wonderful learning experience, and they talked about how they deal with their budget and their capital budget, and how they know what they're going to need next in the way of trucks and equipment. We had a tour of all the equipment. It was really an eye-opener for me, who's never been involved in firefighting at all. It was led by Paul Smeltzer, who is chief, and I thought that was a wonderful thing to do to the community. And they wanted the community to have a better understanding of what they did. I've watched them personally. I live across the street from the Reed Mansion, and I've watched them work. They took down a building next to A.D. Gray that had to be inches from the actual A.D. Gray building, and they burned that building without touching the A.D. Gray building. They are amazing. They are well-trained. It's a well-oiled machine, our fire department. Our police department, Katie Winchenbach and I were fortunate. We were on the committee to interview, and we got a new chief recently. And I have to tell you, it was just amazing to have somebody come in like John Lash, and right here in Waldoboro, local person, wonderful. They do community policing, which is really nice, that I think is very important. I did have a friend who got stopped by one of them once, and that was kind of fun. And she had very nice things to say about the whole process. So I have great pride in both our fire department and our police department.
Margo, Metrick?
I support our fire department and our police department completely, 100%. I think they do an amazing job. They're so dedicated, they're well-trained, and they're there for us 365 days a year, 24/7. I mean, no matter what you need. I had a conversation with Chief Lash about a week ago. I wanted to know, in light of the political situation with some of the protests that are going on nationwide, what our police would do in that kind of situation and what kind of training they had. And he completely reassured me. He called me back immediately. We had a wonderful conversation. He explained how they are trained, how frequently on a rotating basis they are retrained. And just today I saw the president signed an executive order requiring that police credentials be updated and training be updated. Officers that have records that are iffy are going to be tracked and dealt with instead of letting it slide. So I'm happy to see that on a national level and on a local level, we are safe. And I feel safe in Waldoboro. I really do. I mean, we are just a wonderful town, and I think we come together in the spirit of Maine and just support each other. And I support the police and the fire department because they are us. They're all residents of our town. And what they do for us, they're also doing for themselves, and we're very fortunate to have them. Thank you.
Seth Hall.
I will make it unanimous. I have actually great enthusiasm and respect for both of our public safety groups. They're remarkable. Unfortunately, I have some personal experience with our fire department. We had a significant, serious, non-fire incident of vandalism several days after I bought the Jefferson Street Bug Tussle Annex, and we had some serious flooding. Somebody set off some water things. And almost before I knew it, there's Paul and his oilskins coming through with flashlights because the power was shut off and so forth. And just remarkably calm and cool and professional and collected, and the police were there. And the process that ensued because of the vandalism, which was fairly serious and quite expensive, resulted in the conviction of a young local fellow who was known for this kind of thing, a chronic offender. And he went to prison for 6 months. Working with the police was just remarkable. I've never had a reason to work with police like that before, and it was really incredible. They sort of guided me through all my videotape examination of, we have lots of cameras and so forth. We figured out who he was and what to do and how to proceed in court. That was really great. So in that sense, it's terrific. I think there are two things that, I'm probably going to run out of time, but two things that concern me. We have a local case that I'm sure we've all been aware of in the paper that is a little bit is a reminder of the national problem with police overuse of force. There was a shooting in town a few years ago and a young man lost his life. And it's not exactly clear, I don't know the details of it. I think it was a serious incident. Many people think it was not sufficiently investigated, like many people in the country are saying about that now. So I think there's always room for improvement. The police are an established, necessary thing. This idea of defunding the police is insane, or certainly not wise. Don't support that. I'll leave it there for now.
Thank you. This one goes first to Jann Minzy. The former Sylvania property on Friendship Street is for sale. Should the town buy the property? What do you see as the ideal use of this property?
Well, that's an interesting question. That's been for sale for quite a while. I looked at that a long time, quite a while ago, and at one point I thought, well, that would make for a nice solar farm. So that we don't want to disturb the soil there. There are chemicals in it. And then we've been looking at it some more. And what I think is, I think it would be a good idea if the town purchased it. And I can see numerous activities there. It's a large area. There's room enough for say, maybe a boat storage place. We have a nice river, we have nice boats. There might be a place there for some sort of a park. Also, it goes down near the river. There might be some kind of marine activity, again, because it's on the salt part of the river, that could be used. There's the Hoff's house is on that property. That's a historic building in town. I don't know what kind of shape it's in. There was a tree going through it last winter, but it's still a lovely historic building, and perhaps that could be refurbished in some way. And, you know, some kind of a museum of some sort, perhaps, or the river or history of Waldoboro. I think it could have multi-use there, and I would love to see something happen with that property for the town and by the town.
Margo, Metrick?
I've read the DEP statement for the Sylvania site. It's quite extensive. And there are about 17 pages of regulations of what you can and cannot do on that property. It is severely limited what you can do. Exposure for any length of time is prohibited. The changing of any of the soil or foundation is prohibited. That, in other words, that slab has to stay there. I think that this needs to be looked at from all angles. This is not a yes and no issue. If the town could take on that property and do something with it, that will be wonderful. However, I would really like to have this studied completely before we would take on something that is severely contaminated and is a long-term risk. You cannot have anything on there that will have people exposed to the chemicals and gases that are there and being remediated constantly. It's a shame because it's a beautiful site. If we could do something with that, that would be wonderful. But really, I'm an I dotter and a T crosser. I'm the person who reads the directions that when you're going to assemble something and simple tools are required. I read everything. And I would really want it deeply, deeply studied to make sure that we were doing the right thing for the town. I'd love to see it in use. It's an eyesore sitting there, and if we could benefit the town, I'm all for it.
Seth Hall?
So you've hit a subject really close to my heart. As a small businessman, in fact, the property hasn't been for sale for more than 3 months. And part of the reason it was put on the market was because I made a proposal in January to Ledvance, the current owner, to take it off of their hands as a private business person, put it under conservation with the Midcoast Conservancy, who was looking at it in parallel as a solar development. Ron Phillips was helping them with that, and who is now, for the reasons Margo mentioned, I think, sort of backed away from that. The risks are numerous and diverse. You just can't do much. Bob Butler told me a few years ago when they were considering establishing the Sylvania Task Force, which I think did a remarkably good job of just trying to figure out how dangerous the site was. And it's not dangerous in the sense that it's unsafe to walk around it, but it's extremely limited in what you can do with it. The covenants are now finally in place. They're permanent. They're driven by the national EPA. They're enforced by Maine. And they're not going anywhere. Whoever owns it's going to have to live by those covenants forever. So my proposal was to Ledvance to have them basically donate the property as a private entity, not a town entity. I don't know that the town should get involved with this personally. Develop a 2-megawatt solar farm there, something I've thought and advocated for the last 10 years since I've been here. It's a perfect site, it's perfectly situated, and the angles are all right. And then build public trails on the bottom land, the downslope land, as Jann points out. It's just absolutely gorgeous near the river. It's just beautiful, and there are no environmental or personal hazard risks there at all. It's just a wonderful, brackish riverfront. And it would be a terrific thing to do with it. I'm very interested in the Hoff's house. In fact, I was the guy that called them when that windstorm in September blew it down and dealt with them 4 times on the phone, and they finally removed the tree. I offered to do it for nothing with my lift. I have a heavy lift. Anyway, so I'm deeply involved in it, but I'm not at all convinced that the town should get involved with it. I think the 80 Grade Community Center, wherever that, not 80 Grade, the community center, wherever it is a much higher priority for the town, myself.
Jann Griesenbrock?
Okay, well, I have to admit that I don't know a great deal about the Sylvania property. I wasn't here when all that was going on, and evidently I didn't pay attention when discussions were going on with it. First, I think we have to be careful with our citizenry and really investigate or find out, what can go on or what cannot go on there. And do the research. If, from what Seth said just a few minutes ago, it's very, very, it's already been spelled out. It's a hazardous waste site, and it can be used, but under very, very strict rules. And so, find out what would work, given the current rules that are in place for there. It is a wonderful site, and it's too bad that the land is compromised. It really is. But, I say, take a look at the research, make your decisions on what you can do and can't do, and then decide whether you're going to go forward with it or not. I think, if they can sell it to a private entity, that would be fine.
Or donate it.
Or donate it, if that's possible. Sir, that's all.
Thank you. Next question is going to Margo Metrick first. Despite multiple proposals to redevelop the former A.D. Gray School, the building remains vacant and increasingly run down 11 years after the school closed. What should the town do with this property?
The A.D. Gray issue has been, unfortunately, ongoing for a long time. I think it's something that the buck has been passed from town manager and select board, from town manager to select board. The building has a great deal of sentimental value, and it's a beautiful historic building. I would like to see something done with it. Every day that it sits there, it deteriorates more. Every year that it sits there, and there are more regulations that would have to be complied with to make it a useful facility. I really would like to see the A.D. Gray remain there as part of the town and be something that enhances our town. That said, I don't know what can go in there. We really need to look at the options, because the town cannot afford to update that building, and the town cannot afford, unless something miraculous happens, to maintain that building on a regular basis. But I'd really like to see it stay. The cost to demolish it is quite high. It's just a very difficult situation because of the sentiment attached to that building. If we could come up with a proposal, and I have not heard one that is viable, and that's the key. Viable proposal for that building would mean that it would be in use and it would be productive. Hopefully it would bring income to the town, but it would not be something that would require revenue to maintain from the town, from our tax base. Thank you.
Seth Hall.
So this is a question that I think all of us know is very near and dear to my heart. As I mentioned earlier, the Potomac Valley Community Foundation, in spite of protestations from our town manager to the contrary in the paper, was very much involved and invested about $15,000 in trying to develop feasibility study for a community, A.D. Gray Community Center. We were able to capture all the intellectual property that the town paid for through the local architect 44 North in Damariscotta, who did the work for the Y, which was nominally lost. I found it, and we brought it back, and the town now has it again. The town put in very close to $250,000, 235, I think, our financial director, Peg, told me. In terms of doing asbestos remediation, in terms of putting on a brand new insulated roof, major investments on the theory or in the hope that the Y, who said they would like to come here and occupy that building and redo it, would do that, and they didn't. This was very complex. The town was told it inherited, I think, $1.1 million additional dollars for the N.K. Bailey Fund by TD North Bank, and then that went away. And in my view, the Y was interested when they learned about that money, and when 9 months or a year later that money went away, they got very uninterested very fast, and we haven't seen them since. They basically pulled out immediately. I don't know that the Potomac Valley Community Foundation's proposal is the right one, that its time may be past, but I certainly do not believe that the town should give it to a wealthy developer from downstate. Certainly not after spending $100,000, $150,000 demolishing it. I think it's a resource that could be used. We demonstrated that with our engineering studies, and it would be foolish just to let it go to waste. That's my personal view. One last thing, if I can just take a second. The 80 Gray community, what do we call it? Studies that have happened this winter with the potential developer, the select board has tried to keep those in executive session. That's exactly the kind of example of closed, non-open town government I am so vigorously against. I can't talk any more about it now, but.
Yes. Please stay within your time.
I'm sorry, yeah.
Jann Griesenbrock?
Okay, on 80 Gray, I've never been in the building, but I've sure viewed it from outside. From the sounds of it, by what everybody said here, and from what are other things that I've heard, the last thing I think it was used for was for the Halloween by the fire department when they put on their programs at Halloween. A couple of years ago, I think, was the last time it was really used. I don't know, we'd have to look at the actual state of the building, where it is now, and I personally, I don't think that we should, as a town, tear it down and then build something else there. Personally, if that's what the research shows. If, on the other hand, that it has good bones, well then, let's consider it. Let's open some ideas on how it could be used and move forward in that direction. That's all I got to say.
Minzy.
I'm familiar with the building. I worked there, and my children all went to school there also. It does have good bones. I believe it does. It also has some wonderful detail, beautiful detail. It has some nice views from those beautiful old big windows also. We have had a developer, not a wealthy developer, but we have had somebody interested who has a proposal, who has come to the board, and because you're dealing with real estate, it has to be private until the decisions are all made. That's part of the law. So it has to be an executive session if we're dealing with some real estate. That there's another developer who is interested, and both of the people are looking at housing. There's a real housing shortage in Midcoast, Maine. And so we have a meeting coming up. I'll know a little bit more about the new person who's interested. But I certainly hope somebody with a vision, some skill, and some money can do something and bring that building back to the front. A lot of history in that building and that spot.
Thank you. The next question is going to go first to Seth Hall. This question comes from a resident, Will Pratt. What steps would you take to revitalize the village?
Another subject, as I said, very close to my heart. It's a very tough nut to crack, as Jann will tell you. She's lived there for 45 years. It's not like Damariscotta. It's not conducive to that kind of development, unfortunately. So we have to figure out our own way to develop the village, I think. We have this wonderful thing called Art Walk. We have a lot of artists downtown and throughout town. And through the summer and fall, we have these wonderful gatherings. People come from very far away and view art in town. And it goes all afternoon, and people break up and go into evening and eat out and so forth. We need a decent, I should be careful how I say that, we need a good restaurant downtown of some kind. We have the Narrows, which is a lovely little place. Both Jann and I go there, well, until Corbin. It's a great place. You can take your family there. It's good. But it's not a sit-down restaurant. And my feeling, my friend Laura Cabot, who ran the Pinecone restaurant for, I don't know how many years, Jann, many years, would like to do that too. She doesn't want to run it, but we've been trying to figure out how between us we could find a venue for it and develop something like that in the village. We don't have a lot of traffic downtown because of the bypass. And that brings me to another issue that I think is really important, and that is on my list as promotion of Waldoboro, just in general. I think the best way to do something for the downtown is, yes, encourage business people, including myself, to do stuff down there. I hear the Tidewater will be reopening COVID-dependent soon as a cafe again. But we should be pitching things like Medomic clams. We should be building a town park and a gazebo, which is a terrific idea, something Katie Winchenbach has come up on, select board member Katie Winchenbach. But we shouldn't put it on our lawn. We should put it in the village where it's safe, it's off the super highway and the noise and the dirt. And we have a beautiful facility in the village built for us by the state, the town landing, which we should use. We should make use of it.
Jann Griesenbrock.
Okay, to revitalize the village. You know, a lot can be done here with that, and you know, it's going to take money. It's going to take investment, and it's going to take people from within our community and from outside of our community to come take a look at us and start. I think we should start right downtown and move out from there. We've got a phenomenal resource in the Medomic River that flows right through the middle of town in your backyard, I believe. And, you know, that we could use that as part of the draw in encouraging people to be a part of and the revitalization of the Waldoboro community. It's going to take time. It's going to take a lot of communication. It's going to take a lot of research and dedication by the people who are involved in developing our community. I think we ought to set a goal or some plans for the future, what the town thinks would be most beneficial given the resources we have and what we could look toward in the future. So I totally agree. I hope it happens, and I want to be a part of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Jann Minzy.
I certainly have an interest in the village because I live there. It's I think of it as the heart of the community. And when I moved here, we had two sides of the street, and that people would cross the street. And then the new Sproul block was, the old one came down and the new one came up, and all those stores that were on the left side of the town were gone. And I think that may have had something to do with it. I think we can do little things to start, and it will take money. But for years, I've pulled the grass out of the curbing and out of the buildings, just because it looks so much nicer if you don't have grass growing out of the cracks of buildings and things. So I made that my duty. As I would walk, I would stop and pull grass, throw it in the trash. Go on the way back, I'd pull some more grass. It's, you know, it's a tough one. There was some talk once about using the backside of the downtown, because there are entrances or exits or whatever. You can get into the buildings from the backside, and perhaps using some of that. It has a wonderful view down there. In fact, there was a restaurant, the Bistro, and that will be coming back, not as the Bistro. I'm not sure what it will be, but that is going to be, there will be a restaurant there this summer. And that will be very nice to have that property used again. It makes me sad to see empty buildings. And we have a couple empty storefronts. We have a couple more buildings that are businesses that are you know, retiring or moving on. And it makes me sad to see that. So I think we're going to put that right on Max and Bill. See if we can. We have a wonderful planning board. I mean, a planning team, and see if they can't just think about some ideas that we can pull some more people in to fill those nice buildings, and they're buildings with a view.
Margo, Metrick.
I love our downtown, what's left of it, and I would love to see it come back. Unfortunately, this year, we had 3 art galleries leave town. We had 2 restaurants leave Waldoboro, one out of business and for sale, and one had a tragic fire on Easter Sunday. So right there, that was a few strikes against us. A number of years ago, we paid $18,000 to a consultant who came to Waldoboro and took all of our ideas from a community forum that we had and all of our input and put it in an outline of what we could do to move Waldoboro forward. And we were, I think, moving forward under our town management, and then COVID hit. So I think anything that happens, we are going to have to be involved. We are going to have to get the residents all together again. We don't need outside influence to tell us what to do with our town. And I don't think we can count on outside help. We are going to have to be resourceful and find the way to find the money, whether it's grants or whatever it is. I sent a letter to Augusta, to our governor, and I detailed some of the problems we have in Waldoboro. And I detailed what it had done to the clamming industry, the COVID, what it had done with unemployment. In return, I got a letter, and I have it with me, and anyone who wants to see my response, I'd be happy to share it. I was told that I should check with the United Way to get support for our town. Okay, so I guess that summed it right up. And I also was told that the governor has a commission and they're going to do something and they're going to make recommendations by December 1st. So if you're unemployed, try to hang on till December 1st. In the meantime, we're not victims. Let's get together and work on solutions. Thank you.
Thank you. We have about 15 minutes left, and I'm going to try to squeeze in one more question before we go to closing statements. So this question brings us back to Jann Griesenbrock. The town manager and chair of the selectmen have advocated for a community navigator to connect residents with services with donations to cover the costs for the first 2 years. Do you support the creation of this position?
Absolutely 100%. Because it benefits the people of Waldoboro. All across the age ranges from the young, the teenagers, middle-aged, the married and the families, and the elderly. An ombudsman that they have a means by which to find out more information, to get resources, and to help their quality of life in Waldoboro. I heard about this just a couple days ago, and I called Bob Butler to get more information about it because, you know, it makes so much sense. And I believe that every resident of the town of Waldoboro will surely benefit from this. And so I support it 100%.
Minzy?
Absolutely, positively. I think it's a wonderful, wonderful position, and I'm hopeful that will happen soon. Waldoboro is a diverse town, and that's one of our strengths, is our diversity. But with that diversity comes diverse issues and problems. And one person can't, it's hard for us. We have Daryl, who takes care of GM and takes care of when people need things, oil and food and that sort of thing. We have a nice pantry. But if we had one person who sat at the hub and was able to connect people to resources to help them help themselves. And one example, we're a community navigator, and we did have, our town manager took that role. I believe she was the one who did it. She took the role. We had a family who could not pay the taxes. So we say, well, okay, why can't you pay your taxes? Because we have to pay our mortgage. Our mortgage is too high. Okay, why is the mortgage too high? The mortgage is too high because it's at 8% or something ridiculous. So let's go to the bank, see if we can remortgage for something much lower. Makes a huge difference. All of a sudden, we have a family who can pay their taxes and can pay their mortgage. And they didn't need to receive any money from the town. They just needed the help, someone to direct them to how to solve their problem. And so a community navigator would fill that role and do that. So, yes, go for it.
Margo, Metrick?
I do support a town manager. I do support a
That
town
too.
manager. I do support a community navigator for all of the reasons that have already been stated. I think that Waldoboro, if we're going to bring ourselves together, we can pull ourselves up by the bootstraps and be resourceful. And this person is going to be able to help everyone, whether they need help with an infant or whether they need help with elder care. Whatever happens, COVID has hit all of us very hard. I lost my brother yesterday. But the thing is, we have to do it ourselves. We have to be resourceful, and Waldoboro has wonderful people, and everybody can contribute ideas. And I would like to see a commission or a council or whatever you want to call it, a group in Waldoboro that would meet regularly and act upon ideas, because ideas are fine, but I think we need action. I don't have any personal or political interest in the town. What my interest is, the people, and bringing the town to whatever we can be. Again, we're not going to bring back 5-masted schooners, but coming from the coal regions, I certainly grew up with poverty and saw what happens when the main industry leaves. And we really have to come together, and we have the resources. We just need to work together and be active and use them. And we are not victims, and I don't think we can rely on the government to bail us out. We don't need a Band-Aid. We need some help to get going, and we can do this if we work together. Thank you.
Seth Hall?
So this is a really great example, I think we have unanimity here again, of what an activist select board could do. Our town manager traveled to, I think, Booth Bay and had a very formative experience with their community navigator, I've forgotten the person's name, brought that information back, beat the drum, stirred up interest, educated the select board and residents through meetings, and is a strong proponent of this. And I think that's a great idea. This is a little bit like our town manager went to the Warren State Prison and got them involved with us in our landfill, our transfer station, cut their trash hauling bill enormously and benefited our town. That's an activist town manager. I'm absolutely for it, all in. The food pantry, which was in my building until just recently when the demand just about doubled, I think, because of COVID, and has now found a new home, I hear, at the McDonald House. I don't know if anybody else is aware of that. So we'll be leaving my building after the emergency is over. That kind of behavior, pulling the town together, the fire department, first responders, and putting them in the town fire bays, that's activist government, as far as I'm concerned. It's smart activist government. Sometimes government things like this cost money. I am not convinced that we should hope for donations. Maybe we already have the funding for the first years. I don't know. I don't know why the town just doesn't pay for it. I'm not naive enough to think we have an unlimited budget. That's not, don't take that wrong. But to build your town, to grow your town, you have to invest in your town. Just like if you don't want bumpy roads with holes, you have to pay them. You have to tax people, some, fairly, and then you have to spend the money on the town. Community building that we've all been talking about is the same thing. And a community advocate is sort of a pinnacle of that. It's a brilliant idea that we should fund. And an activist select board would do that. I'm glad to see them doing that in this case.
Thank you. Now we're going to have closing statements, and we're going to start with Jann Minzy.
Oh, my goodness. Well, I'm going to be very brief with that. We've done a lot, I think. We've done a lot of work, I believe, in the last couple of years. We have stability in our town manager's office, and that's a wonderful thing for Waldoboro. We have a really good team of employees in the office. We have good department heads with their teams. We have a great overall team. We've laid a lot of groundwork in the last couple of years, I believe, here. A lot of it is slowed down since March, but I'm expecting that will pick up again. We've laid that groundwork, and I'd like to be there to continue and to build that big picture that we have for Waldoboro. I've appreciated the support of the town for the last 6 years, and I would ask for support for the next 3 years. Thank you.
Margo, Metrick.
I would like to be on the select board for all of the reasons I've stated tonight. I'd like to see our town come together, remain focused on the big picture, and just work together to use all of our resources and all of our intellect and all of our ideas and work with the town manager and the select board to get things done. I think we can do it. We all have something to contribute, whether it's a small idea or a big one. And I think if we work together, if we actually take people's ideas and follow through on them to use the resources that are available to us, I think we can bring industry here. I think we can bring business here. And I think we can bring more residents here with more housing. I think that there are so many opportunities here. As long as we keep focused, we're a full-service community. We have so much to offer to anyone. And I think it's really important to just have a group in town that will come together, exchange ideas, and follow through on them. We have comprehensive plan. We have everything that we paid the gentleman from Portland a few years ago to come and work with us and put ideas together. I think now is the perfect time to take those ideas, pull ourselves up by the bootstraps, and just dig right in. We can do it. And we have the new medical center coming, hopefully, that will benefit everyone. We need to make sure that our town has everything to offer to anyone who wants to move here or everyone who is here. Thank you. And don't forget to get an absentee ballot.
Seth Hall.
You stole my line. So I've said a couple times this evening, and thank you to Lincoln County News and JW for bringing us together here. I think it was a useful conversation. Thank you to the town as well. The bottom line for me is I think the top elected representatives of our town, of our community, for the health of our community, it's a good thing that the select board is activist. It's a good thing. I'm not referring to wild-eyed activism and sit-ins and things like that, but that take and promote ideas, that take as an important part of their job. For example, the community advocate, that's a perfect example. The transportation initiative, you know, we have a town planner, and actually two, Bill and Max, that are extraordinary. They keep bringing in grant money. You just point them at something, and sometimes you don't even point them. They just come up with stuff. And the fact that the select board encourages, and the town manager encourages them to do that is fantastic. I think we need even more of that. We have transportation issues. We like to talk about the medical center, but I have heard so many times at select board meetings, not being a member, being in the audience, as long as it doesn't cost any money, we can do it. Well, sometimes you have to invest in your community, not just time and effort, but you have to go out and pitch for your community, whether it's regionally or statewide, to the state government, the Lincoln County government, to build a community. And there's been a fair amount of talk about community building here tonight, and I think that's where it starts. Instead of having oppositional conversations, we should try to figure out, perhaps the select board could lead the community for a change in being more inclusive in terms of community conversation. I think that would be a very big enhancement for our select board. Jann, to my left, mentioned that he had been invited to be on the board. He's been invited, as I understand it, by a group to keep it the same, more of the same. I think we need some change, and I would like to offer that change, and I have a track record that demonstrates I'm capable of it. Thank you.
Jann Griesenbrock.
Okay, first, as a selectman, I'll listen to the residents of Waldoboro. I'll bring your ideas to the board, and will surely be available to meet face-to-face, maybe with a mask. I don't have any access to grind. I'm not coming in here with, a red face and my muscles bulging because I'm upset about anything. I'm not. I think we have a great community here. You can go anywhere in the town of Waldoboro and feel safe. That's the way it used to be when I was a kid in my hometown. And that's the way it is here, and I think we need to keep it that way. If elected, I know that I'm going to have a steep learning curve. And what I propose to do is to spend time with each of the departments within the town to learn who the people are, what their equipment is, and how they do their job. So I better understand about going forward in working with the board. We've already talked about how well our police department is and our fire department, so I don't need to go into that. I think our biggest challenge, though, is the economy, and we talked about this earlier, but this COVID-19 has really rocked our world. And so it's going to take time, but we will come back. We're Americans. Drug addiction is another problem, another critical problem within our community. And it's enforcement and education are the keys. My ideas, people have asked me about ideas that I might have. First is reduce the tax burden on the elderly. Those that, they're on fixed income, they can't afford increases every year. An idea I have is bringing the National Guard in, not to quell riots, but to pick up garbage on weekends. We did that at one of the communities where I lived. They just took a weekend, went through every street, picked it up. It was a one-shot deal, but it really improved the town. I see the red card's up. I'm done. Thank you very much. Vote for me.
Okay, this concludes the candidates forum. I want to say thank you to the candidates, thank you to the viewers, thank you to Julie and Max from the town of Waldoboro, thank you to Larry and Dave from LCTV, thank you to my colleague Alex from the LCN. Have a good night.
That's a wrap. You've got a big
That's
heart.
a wrap.
I got to admit, you've got a big heart.
What do you mean?
Oh, everything is near and dear to my heart.
Yeah.
Oh,